Welcome to Tillis Tales video number 72, part 2. Please, if you haven't watched part 1, do so now. You won't get anything out of this without seeing without having part 1 first. We left Yaakov where he had accepted the invitation to a full-time top scholarship at the University of Petersburg in the mathematics department, even though we knew it wasn't appropriate for an adept Torah scholar such as he. But he was determined that he could maintain all his Jewish external appearance and his Jewish customs, his Jewish ways, and still be able to do the mathematical studies required of him. And so he did for a while. He even managed to include a session of Torah study every day as well. But as his academic standing grew and his social status increased, so he began making compromises. He shaved off his beard. He stopped wearing identifiably Jewish clothes. He began to socialize more and more. He went out with his friends on Shabbos as well as other times. So he couldn't keep Shabbos anymore. In the places he went to, he couldn't keep kosher anymore. And one by one, all his Jewish appearance and mannerisms and behaviors fell aside. And soon he was indistinguishable from all the other students at the university. The final step, he even married a non-Jewish woman. Years went by, and he was offered a full professorship at the university. This is an extremely prestigious position, and he was very excited about it, but there was a hitch. A Jew wasn't allowed to be a professor at the university. He would have to convert. But, why should he let a little thing like that bother him? He couldn't let that stop him, could he? And so he did. More time went by, and at a certain point, his conscience started to bother him. How could he abandon his Jewish roots so completely like that? And he felt the urge to change his life, to return to Judaism. But he just didn't have the strength to do it when he considered all the problems involved. Not only the economic problems and social problems, he would no longer be a professor or welcome at the university in any form. But the law in Russia was that a Jew that converts to Eastern Orthodox and then goes back to being Jewish, Chayav Misa, it's a capital crime punished by death, instant execution. Similarly, by the way, for a Gentile that converted to Judaism. So we kind of like put it aside, but it was gnawing at him. And one aspect of his non-Jewish life that he actually thoroughly enjoyed was engaging in the extremely non-Jewish sport of hunting. And he would often go out with his friends on horseback in pursuit of this game or that game. And recently, since he started having this inner turmoil, he enjoyed going out by himself. He felt that it was important, it relaxed him, and it provided some respite from the anguish of his soul. One day when he went out alone, all of a sudden, his horse started galloping faster and faster, and he couldn't control him. The more he pulled on the reins, it didn't help. The horse just kept going faster and faster, and now he could see there was a steep cliff approaching. This could be the end. He needed a miracle. And emotionally, he said to himself, if there's a miracle, if I'm saved, I'll return to Judaism. I'll be a complete Baal Tshuva. I'll be just as I was before, a very committed, industrious Jew. And amazingly enough, as soon as he took this resolution, the horse calmed down and reduced his gallop to a canter and was back under control. Well, that very night, Yaakov acted on his resolution. He all the valuables in the house, the money, the jewelry, whatever, he left for his non-Jewish wife and children, and he packed up all his personal belongings and he set out. He wandered from place to place incognito because he knew that the law, the police, etc., would be after him. A prestigious professor abandoned his position, and everybody could figure out it's because he's Jewish. And he wandered from place to place, which in itself was very difficult in Russia in those days, as I think it's still today. You needed an internal passport, not just an external passport for traveling to other countries, but an internal passport to go from one area of Russia to another. And so he was constantly nervous and looking over his shoulder. Would he be caught because he couldn't use his papers, which would identify him. In fact, he destroyed them. One day he wandered into an inn, like a restaurant. He wanted to get something to drink, and while he was sitting there, all of a sudden there was a loud noise. The door slammed open, and a squad of what would today be called the KGB, or whatever they're called today, burst in and said everybody has to remain in their place and show their papers. It wasn't that they were looking for him specifically, but it was a spontaneous inspection. Nevertheless, he was trapped. When they finally came to him that he should show them his papers, he said he didn't have any. Immediately he was arrested, and he was closed in a room. And they said, "You'll have to wait here till the chief inspector can interview you. We're going to tell him all about you." So after a while, he was brought into the chief inspector, who was a cruel-looking person. But the inspector did not address Yaakov right away. Instead, he was like glancing down at something he was holding below the table level. And Yaakov didn't know what was going on, but he was concerned, and he kind of inched a bit closer until he could see. And he saw that the inspector was looking at a wanted poster with his picture on it. But it didn't look like him. On the other hand, it didn't look like him. He was dressed in the finest non-Jewish modern fashion. He was clean-shaven. He had a fancy hairdo, etc. And now he looked like a religious Jew. So he was hoping that the inspector wouldn't recognize him, but the danger was very great. And then he heard the inspector muttering to himself. He looked up at Yaakov and he looked down, and he said, "On, yet on, yet on. It's him. It's not him. It's him. It's not him. On, yet on." And finally he rested on yet on. It's not him, and he released Yaakov. Well, Yaakov remembered instantly where he had first heard on yet on. And he went directly to Lubavitch and the Rebbe Rashab, Rabbi Shalom Dov Ber, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, and from there he never departed.